In the spring of 2023, I had the chance to learn firsthand about the links between climate change and migration in farming communities in Thailand. I travelled with a group of local Thai researchers as they interviewed villagers to learn more about their perceptions of climate change and human mobility. During my time there, I was really lucky that some of the villagers were happy to speak to me directly about their lives and their livelihoods. And in just 4 days, I learned a lot about the complex links between weather, agriculture, adaptation, and human mobility, just to name a few things. In this video, I want to share some of my more interesting interviews and to explain why I think this type of research is so important. As a climate science journalist, I've been exploring the topic of climate-driven migration for the past couple of years. Research shows that climate change is already impacting human movement. However, the link is not very straightforward. A person's decision to leave home depends on a huge range of factors, including their ability to adapt to changes, the strength of their family connections, and the political situation in their home country. A research program called Habitable is trying to unpack some of these components by carrying out thousands of surveys with rural communities across 5 different countries in Africa and Asia. In Thailand, the research is led by a non-government organisation called the RACS Thai Foundation. Over several months, the team visited dozens of villages and surveyed more than 1,000 households. Each survey took around 2 hours to complete. I was only there for about 4 days, and I still saw an amazing range of different villages and people. This is Tawan Jurno, a program assistant with RACS Thai. On my first day in Thailand, she walked me through what the survey includes and how it's conducted.
It is a survey that is comprised of about 100 questions. Firstly, just general information about the household and like who is living in the household and such. And then we also go into the migration history of anyone in that household. And there is also a section on the climate risk and perceptions, and that is related to the adaptive capacity of the household. And also there's a section on the psychology, like personality of the households, and then on place of attachment, which is kind of their social groups and whatnot, and social capital.
To set up the interviews, the team introduced themselves to the head of each village directly, and if they're granted permission to carry out research, they then randomly select around 15 households from each village. The RACS Thai team trained dozens of people, mainly university graduates, to carry out the surveys, and wherever possible, they recruit local people from the villages being studied into the interview teams. One of the research team leads, who goes by the nickname of Dream, told me why this is so important.
ครับสำหรับคนที่อยู่ในทีมสัมภาษณ์ที่ทีมสำรวจข้อมูลนะที่อยู่ในชุมชนเนี่ยข้อดีก็คือ1เขาเป็นคนที่รู้บริบทของชุมชนเขารู้ว่าจะสัมภาษณ์ครอบครัวไหนที่จะตรงกับกลุ่มเป้าหมายที่เราต้องการนะครับอันนี้คือคนที่อยู่ในชุมชนแล้วอีกอย่างหนึ่งก็เซฟคอสของโครงการด้วยนะครับเซฟคอสอันดับที่2อันดับที่3ก็คือคนในชุมชนที่เราลงสัมภาษณ์จะมีความไว้เนื้อเชื่อใจให้กับคนที่ไปสัมภาษณ์นะครับเหมือนลูกเหมือนหลานเขานะครับเขาก็จะให้ความร่วมมือที่ดีครับ
In total, I spent 4 days with the research team. Each day began with meeting the village head, answering any final questions, and then splitting off into small groups to conduct the surveys. On my first day, we visited the village of Drum Krai, and I spoke to a couple whose income comes mainly from growing a fruit called longan. They even let me try some of the fruit, which they grew in their own front garden, while we chatted.
ออกดอกนี่ป้าทุกจังหวัดจะได้ลำไยดกขนาดแต่ฝนมันต้องมาคือมันก็หลวงลนหมดเลยเนาะของแม่นี่3 ปีบ่ได้เลยแต่ส่วนอื่นเพิ่นอาจจะเนี่ยถ้ามันดินเรียบๆอีกก็ดีอยู่ได้บางคนเป็นบางคนเจ้า
The couple told me that they have 2 sons who've already left home to find work and who are sending money back, and so they didn't think they would need to move even if their harvest continued to fail. In fact, this pattern seemed very common in the village. As we walked around, I saw plenty of children and elderly people, but not a lot of people in their 20s and 30s. Josie, the RACS Thai consultant who interviewed the couple, explained this dynamic to me.
มีนะเพราะว่า ที่ชาวบ้านที่ชาวบ้านเนาะสะท้อนออกมาก็คือว่าการทำงานการลงทุนแบบซ้ำๆจนเป็นหนี้แล้วก็หาทางออกบ่ได้ก็ก็เสียทั้งนาเสียทั้งทรัพย์สินของตัวเองเนื่องเพราะลูกหลานก็ต้องไปพยายามออกไปข้างนอกแล้วพอเจ็บเป็นเจ็บไข้มาก็บ่มีไข่ปลาไป แล้วก็ลูกหลานก็บ่อยากกลับมาแล้วเพราะมันกลับมาแล้วหากินมาทำธุรกิจอย่างบ่ได้เลยอย่างเนี่ยก็คือแท้งใจดำก็คือว่าอ้าวมันมีใครไปส่งโรงพยาบาลอย่างเงี้ยอ่านหนังสือก็บ่เป็นอ่านยากินยาไปเลยอย่าง
I soon learned that villagers with more money and assets often have the adaptive capacity to deal with changes. On day 2, we visited the village of Huainan, which appeared to be the wealthiest of the 4 villages that I saw overall. There was a huge range of houses, but many of them were very large and impressive-looking structures built from concrete or stone. Dawan told me that if a house has a car parked outside it, or if it's got fresh paint, there's a good chance that its inhabitants have at least one family member who is working abroad and sending remittances back home. I quickly learned that these remittances, which were mainly made up of people in their 20s and 30s sending money home to their parents or children, form a really important source of income for a lot of these villages. I spoke to a couple who own a large house and have been growing rice on about 10 acres of land for some 30 years. I was really impressed at the level of technology they have at their disposal. They told me that they hire workers to work the land and give them blowers or drones to help spread the rice seeds more quickly. The couple told me that they've seen around 3 consecutive years of bad flooding, which have destroyed much of their crop and damaged key infrastructure such as irrigation channels. When I asked whether they would ever consider migrating, they told me no, they have plenty of other options for bringing in money.
ต้องมีอาชีพเสริม
ต้องมีเสริมจังหวะโลกขายประกันทองนั่นจ้ะขายหวยทอง
ก็หาเงินได้ บอกว่าเรื่องตัวคือพี่อันนี้เป็นตัวแรกได้
อ๋อ
รถฟอร์เนี่ยแหละก็ทำงานหากินได้
รถ
After spending my first 2 days in fairly wealthy and low-lying villages, on day 3 we drove higher up the mountain to the Rex Tin Thai village. On average, these houses seemed a lot poorer than those I had seen on days 1 and 2. There were a lot more tin roofs and fewer concrete structures. My translator, Sawang, explained to me that as you drive to higher altitudes, further from the main cities, villagers tend to become poorer and less well-educated. The assistant head of the village explained to me that most of the village's 400 residents are farmers, who mainly grow mountain rice, paddy rice, and rubber trees. Given the mountainous terrain, he said that flash flooding is very common, but he said it doesn't last long or cause extensive damage. He did warn that changing rainfall patterns are making the droughts worse, and this is impacting the village's water supply. During one particularly intense drought 2 or 3 years ago, he said the villagers had to pump up water from a main river downstream. Nevertheless, he didn't think it would be necessary to leave the village, saying that the villagers could easily adapt to any changes. He told me that the weather forecast is really useful and said that if it shows delayed rainfall, for example, then the villagers could just plant their crops later to adapt. Besides, he said that he and his wife were already settled in the village and they didn't want to leave. He seemed like a resourceful man and told me that he's making use of the expanding demand for cars. He's already starting to loan his car out and has aspirations to become a mechanic. On my final day with the research team, we travelled even higher up the mountain to a village called Pailao Yu, which is home to more than 500 people from the Hmong and Akha tribes. The 2 tribes live together, but I was told that you can tell which tribe someone's from the patterns on their waistcoats, which they often embroider by hand. This village immediately seemed like the poorest of the 4 that I visited during my time in Thailand. Some of the houses had roofs made of corrugated metal, but many others were thatched, and I was told that this upgrade had only begun about a decade ago. Most people in the village are farmers, and they rely on rice, lychee, corn, cabbage, and more recently onions for their income. The daughter of the village chief told me that weather patterns have been changing recently and that this is affecting the harvest.
ค่ะสำหรับคิดว่าแต่ก่อนอดีตกับปัจจุบันนี่สภาพอากาศนี่เปลี่ยนแปลงไปเยอะเหมือนกันค่ะเพราะว่าแต่ก่อนอากาศมันจะเย็นกว่านี้ฤดูหนาวนี่คือจะเย็นมากหนาวมากแต่ปัจจุบันก็คือปีนึงก็คือหนาวนี่ถ้าเทียบมาก็คือไม่ถึงเดือนแล้วค่ะแล้วก็หนาวไม่ได้หนาวจัดขนาดนั้นแล้วก็จะมีฝนตก คือเป็นฝนที่เหมือนหลงฤดูมันไม่ได้ตกตามฤดูกาลมันก็จะอาจจะมาก่อนมาหลังแล้วมันทำให้ทิ้งช่วงบางครั้งก็คือส่งผลกระทบต่อการทำเกษตรของชาวบ้านด้วยค่ะส่วนฤดูแล้งนี่ก็คือพบเจออยู่เพราะว่าอย่างว่าแต่ละที่มันไม่ได้มีน้ำทุกจุดบางคนทำเกษตรก็คือมันก็ส่งผลกระทบต่อเขาเนี่ยค่ะถ้าไม่มีน้ำก็คือทำให้ผลผลิตของเขาเนี่ยไม่ดีแล้วก็ขายไม่ได้ราคาก็ตามไปด้วยค่ะ
She also told me more about seasonal migration patterns in and around the village, explaining that workers from Laos, who are often in their late teens, often cross over into Thailand to work on the rice fields or to help harvest cabbage, while Thai villagers in their 20s tend to go abroad to Korea or Israel, where they're able to work for more money and send some home to their families. This is Dee, a more senior RACS Thai staff member who supported and organised a lot of the data collection efforts. He told me that in his view, climate change and migration are 100% related, but he did say that the villagers often don't see this connection. When the crops fail, he said that villagers often refer to economic problems rather than thinking about changes in weather or climate, and I asked him whether he thinks the villagers are aware of climate change.
จริงๆแล้วถ้าจะมองแบบนั้นก็ไม่ผิดนะฮะเพราะว่ามันยังขาดคนที่ทำความเข้าใจเรื่องการเปลี่ยนแปลงที่มันเชื่อมโยงกับ livelihood ของชาวบ้านจริงๆผมว่าเนี่ยในประเทศไทยหรือว่าหลายๆที่นะขาดมันเลยไม่นำพาไปสู่เรื่องของการปรับตัวการ adaptation ของชาวบ้านในการทำการเกษตรในการปรับวิถีชีวิตเพราะฉะนั้นสิ่งที่ปรับง่ายที่สุดเงินไม่พอคือออกมาประกอบกับเดี๋ยวนี้คนมีความรู้ความสามารถเพิ่มขึ้นใช่ไหมครับก็คิดว่าตัวเองจบอนุปริญญาจบปริญญาก็ออกมาหางาน
Meanwhile, Tawan told me that it's partly a question of terminology.
They may not use the term like climate change, but they definitely talk about how the weather has changed or how like over the years like there is less rain or like the droughts just last longer or there might be a year where there was just a lot of rainfall. So they use vocab and like terminology that are linked to changing weather patterns, and definitely I've noticed that in all the places that we've been to, the villagers are aware that there is a change.
The villagers that I spoke to rarely brought up climate change unprompted. However, when we asked them about the reasons behind the changing weather patterns they'd seen, many were able to speak very clearly about climate change and the role of human activity.
ได้ผ่านข่าวมาเยอะกับเรื่องไอ้โลกร้อนเนี่ยมาได้ยินมาหลายปีละคิดว่ามันมีผลจริงๆนะก็นั่นแหละอากาศจากปกติตีบางทีอ่ะฤดูเนี่ยควรจะเป็นฤดูฝนมันต้องตกฝนตกแบบเยอะแต่ว่าตอนเนี้ยฝนตกน้อยกว่าที่ควรจะเป็น
แต่ผมคิดว่าเกี่ยวกับสภาพโลกมันนะครับเพราะว่ามันเหมือนก่อนมาเนี่ยมันได้เปลี่ยนแปลงไปแล้วนะครับคือบอกว่าความเป็นอยู่ภูมิประเทศหรือว่าการพัฒนาของเฮาเนี่ยของมนุษย์เฮาเนี่ยมันจะมีการก่อสร้างหรือว่าอย่างป่าไม้ทรัพยากรป่าไม้ตัวเองมันก็น่าจะมีส่วนนะครับผมว่า
As is fairly typical of social sciences research, there wasn't one definitive answer. Every person I spoke to had different opinions on climate change, the ease of adaptation, the link between weather and crop yields, the necessity of human movement, and so on. But in my opinion, this nuance is exactly why it's so important to talk to a lot of different people. I met many of the project leads from the Habitable team at the annual Habitable meeting in Rome at the end of 2022, and they explained to me that the surveys carried out in Thailand are just one tiny part of the overall research that they're doing. As well as surveys, they're organising focus group discussions, stakeholder discussions, town hall meetings, and many other different methods of collecting data. Hopefully, I'll be able to report on some of their findings later this year. Many thanks to my colleagues at Carbon Brief, to the teams at Habitable and RACS Thai, and to my translator, Sawang Tongli. This reporting was made possible by the European Geosciences Union through their Science Journalism Fellowship.